Good morning. If you can hear me, type yes in the chat box. Gonna do a sound check. Okay. We'll get started this morning. Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about supporting details. So supporting details, they use the same topics as the words in context and text structure. Remember the bones of the story, or the writing. So we have description, sequence, compare and contrast, cause and effect, and problem and solution. They follow those same categories. And I have got a video here for us to watch this morning on patterns in reading and supporting details. Let me share my sound with you so you can hear it. All right, here we go.
We saw that writers put ideas in paragraphs. We then look for patterns of information in the paragraph to understand the idea. Yeah, it sounds easy, doesn't it? But how many times do we get to the end of the paragraph and still don't know what the main idea is? It's very frustrating. Hey, stick around and let's look at how you can use the details in the paragraph to understand the main idea much faster. Hi, welcome back to Snap Language. Mark Franco here. Main idea and supporting details. When we read in real life, those can be a problem. Maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing. So why don't we try something different? If we understand the writing process and understand the paragraph first, we'll know what to look for when we read. Let's see what I do as a writer. In a very simplified way, the writing process goes like this. I have a topic and an idea about that topic. That's the main idea I want to communicate to you, the reader. I encode the idea, which means I organize into a paragraph the thoughts that together convey that idea to you. Those are the details that support my main thought or my main idea. I have an idea here. The topic is public health. Many people confuse public health and clinical medicine. So my idea is to explain what public health is by comparing it with clinical medicine. Okay, what I need now are details that support the idea that public health is different from clinical medicine. One major detail is that public health focuses on the community, but clinical medicine focuses on the person. The other major difference is public health tries to prevent illnesses, but clinical medicine treats people who are already sick. Now I have all the ingredients from a paragraph. When you put these ideas together, they'll support the idea that there are two main differences between public health and clinical medicine. Clinical medicine is concerned with treating a person who has become ill. But this is about clinical medicine. What about public health? Public health, on the other hand, is concerned with protecting and improving the health of an entire community. Oh, okay, here's some information about clinical medicine first. On the other hand, is a transition that shows how that information contrasts with public health. But there's more. Moreover, because public health treats the community before people get ill, it is preventive. Great, public health is preventive. From that, you infer clinical medicine is not. It treats people after they get sick. You know that a good writer organizes an idea into a paragraph, so when you read, look for that organization and let the details guide you. In another video, we learned that a paragraph always has a main idea, but it may or may not be stated in a main idea sentence. I don't see one here, but what's implied here is that public health differs from clinical medicine in two main ways. Oh, now there it is. Now we have a main idea sentence, even though you didn't really need one because the paragraph was clear enough. How about this one? There are two main differences between public health and clinical medicine. Yes, that works too. But wait a minute, I still have to reread paragraphs all the time to see these patterns of information. How do you stop that from happening? Rereading is part of the reading process. You can make it easier on yourself if you focus on understanding what you're reading. Let the details guide you, and eventually the main idea that the writer wants you to understand just clicks. It also takes practice. The more you read, the more fluent your reading becomes, and the better you become at finding these patterns. Then you don't have to reread as often. Speaking of practice, look at this paragraph. Type 2 diabetes is the most common form of this illness. In type 2 diabetes, the body cannot produce or use insulin effectively. The risk of type 2 diabetes increases with age. Genetics and lifestyle also play a role. However, the exact causes of type 2 diabetes are not fully understood. Examine the details in this paragraph. The details support a main idea. What is this main idea? Pause the video and think about it. This first sentence tells you that type 2 diabetes is the most common. Is the paragraph about how common it is? Not really. You see in the next sentence that the author explains what causes this type of diabetes. The next two sentences explain two other causes. Finally, the writer explains that the exact causes are not fully understood. Well, do you see the pattern? Cause, cause, cause. The details tell you the main message from the writer is that type 2 diabetes has several possible causes. In fact, that could be stated right here. So when you read, don't forget that reading is about understanding what the writer wants you to understand. The writer has an idea. The writer encodes that idea in writing. You decode the message so the idea is transferred from the writer's head into your head. Is that cool or what? When you read to understand the content, look at the details the author used. Look at how the ideas are organized in the paragraph. Look for patterns of information. What do the ideas have in common? What is the idea the author is supporting with those details? Using the details, the idea will eventually pop out of the page. That means you understand what you're reading. Focus on understanding and learning the content as opposed to finding that one main idea sentence in the paragraph that may not even be there. The most important thing is to understand the message. Do you read to learn the content? Why do you think sometimes we get so focused on things that don't matter? Do you build a mental picture of the ideas the writer expresses? This takes practice, so get out there and read a lot. Read different subjects, read different types of publications. Notice how you're reading and maybe try a different approach. And please support Snap Language, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Subscribers
Okay, so that was about supporting details and how we can use supporting details to find the main idea. Like he said, sometimes that main idea is not written out directly. You have to look through the supporting details to find out what the author is trying to tell you. What is the main idea? Now we're going to talk about inferences. This is when we use previous knowledge and experience and our five senses to find out an answer to a question. So your five senses are hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching. You can put those together with a story and you have previous knowledge of, and you can draw a conclusion. So infer just means to derive by reasoning, to conclude or judge from premise or evidence. It's an educated guess. It's reading between the lines, so to speak. It's reading facts and evidence to reach a logical conclusion or opinion. So when we're reading, we should be asking ourselves, what is the text trying to tell me without coming right out and telling me? word for word. And I've got a video on making inferences. I think you'll like this one. It's pretty good. Just a moment.
Today's lesson is on making inferences. When you make inferences, it's kind of like you're a detective looking for clues to make a logical conclusion. So what is an inference? An inference is when you take what you know, plus what you read or something you see, and that gives you your inference. So let's practice. Here is our first scenario. Let's start with what I know. What I know is that the dog loves shoes and the dog chews a lot. This is my background knowledge that I already know. And what I see in the picture is that the dog looks guilty and there's a huge mess. So my inference is that the dog chewed up this paper towel and played with the shoes. So how do you talk about or write about an inference? We can use some sentence frames to help us. I can infer that blank because I know blank, and I see blank, and I read blank. So in this case, I can infer that the dog chewed up this paper towel and played with the shoes because I know the dog loves shoes and the dog chews a lot. And I see the dog looks guilty and there's a huge mess. Here's another way we can say or write an inference. I know blank, and I see and I read blank. Therefore, I can infer that blank. So I know the dog loves shoes, and the dog chews a lot. And I see the dog looks guilty, and there's a huge mess. Therefore, I can infer that the dog chewed up this paper towel and played with the shoes. Let's try it again. This time, we're going to think about what we read or see first. What I see is the baby has a surprised expression and the baby is holding a green fruit that looks like a lime. What I know is that limes are sour and babies put lots of things in their mouth. So my inference is that the baby tasted the lime. Let's practice writing and saying this inference. I can infer that blank because I know blank, and I see and I read blank. So I can infer that the baby tasted the lime because I know limes are sour and babies put lots of things in their mouth. And I see the baby has a surprised expression and the baby is holding a green fruit that looks like a lime. Sometimes you make inferences when you're reading too. So let's try it with this passage. Kelly stomped her feet and pointed angrily at her little brother. Mom was trying to calm her down, but she ran off to her room and slammed the door shut. As Mom looked at her son, she sighed. Here we go again, she said. She started picking up the pieces of the puzzle and told Joey, you need to help me clean this up and then go apologize to your sister. What I read is that Kelly is mad and the puzzle is in pieces and Mom told Joey to apologize. What I know, my background knowledge, is that siblings bother each other a lot and people apologize when they've done something wrong. So my inference is that Joey destroyed Kelly's puzzle. I know blank, and I see and I read blank. Therefore, I can infer that blank. Let's practice. I know siblings bother each other and people apologize when they've done something wrong. And I read that Kelly is mad, the puzzle is in pieces, and Mom told Joey to apologize. Therefore, I can infer that Joey destroyed Kelly's puzzle.
Okay, so that was about inferences and making inferences. And again, in making an inference or inferring something is just using what you're given plus your background knowledge and experience to come to a conclusion. All right, so say you're sitting in your house and you see some flashing lights through the window and you hear sirens. What do you think might be happening? Type that in your chat box for me. So you're just sitting there in your house, and all of a sudden, through the window, you see flashing lights and you hear sirens. What do you think might be going on? What's the first thought that comes to your head? If I was sitting there and something happened like that, and I saw lights and then I heard sirens, my first thought would be somebody's in trouble or somebody's hurt or there's some type of emergency. Well, why do I think that? Because of past knowledge and experience. In my experience, every time sirens are happening and flashing lights, it's some kind of emergency vehicle, whether it be a fire truck or an ambulance or a police officer. That's usually what's going on. And I can infer that. Okay. I want you to take a look at this picture. Okay. Now, just based on what you can see here, what do you think is happening here? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what you infer. Okay. So type that in the chat box for me. What do you think is happening? I'll give you just a minute to do that. So the first thing I think is maybe somebody's being bullied. What details in the picture make me think that? Well, it looks like the girl's got a ball over her head, and it looks like she's about to throw it at the girl on the ground. And so it looks like she might be bullying, fixing to hit the girl. So how do we feel like the girl on the ground is looking? How does she feel? To me, it looks like she might be a little bit scared. What details make me think that? Well, she does not have a happy look on her face. It looks more like scared or maybe even apprehensive or maybe even a little bit angry. And then she's got her hand up in a protective motion. So she's trying to protect herself. What time of year do you think it is? Well, if I look at the picture, it looks like the grass is either dead or dying. So it could be summertime, late summertime, or it could be early spring when the grass is just starting to turn green. But it's a warmer month. What makes me think that the girl's hair is wet, like maybe she just got out of a sprinkler or a pool, or even out of the shower. You usually don't go run around outside with wet hair if it's cold outside. And the clothes that they're wearing, they're just wearing like jeans and t-shirts, so it makes me think it's a warmer month. These are all just inferences that I'm making from what I can see in the picture, the information I'm giving, and my background knowledge. Okay, everybody still with me? Okay, what about this guy? Anybody know who this is? Excuse me. This is Garfield, and I'm gonna guess I'm going to infer that he just ate a whole bunch of pie and that he's really full. What makes me think this is he's got a bunch of empty pie plates. He's got a piece of pie in his hand. He's got a pie in front of him. And he's got this big old belly. And he's got this sleepy, satisfied look in his eyes. So I'm just making inferences based on what I can see in my background knowledge. All right, I've got another video for you on making inferences. We'll play that right now.
From the moment she strolled into my office, I could tell she was going to be a difficult sentence to read. You could tell from the way she walked that she was carrying a lot of information, but getting it out of her wouldn't be easy. I was going to need to make an inference. Hey, what's up, readers? David here. I'm taking advantage of the cold that I have by doing my serious detective voice in order to teach you about inferences. Hold on, let me get that. Hi, this is David. I'm in the middle of doing a video. Now isn't a great time.
Hello, I have information about what an inference is.
Oh, that's great. Cool. Follow me over to the next screen. What is an inference, please?
An inference is a conclusion that you make based on clues given in a piece of writing. It's more than a guess, but it's not just an observation either.
Great. Thank you. Was that all you needed?
Yeah, that was my whole thing.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
So, an inference is a conclusion that you draw from writing. It's an idea that you pull from a sentence or a passage that isn't literally printed there. It's the detective work of reading, finding clues that help you make sense of what's being said. I feel like we're kind of getting bogged down in theory land, so let's take a look at an example. I went outside and made an enormous snow fort. There's my snow fort. A little D on the flag to represent me. There's my little hot cocoa, a couple marshmallows floating in there, my Khan Academy mug. They don't make Khan Academy mugs. I want a Khan Academy mug. Okay, so what conclusions can we draw from these two sentences? I went outside and made an enormous snow fort. Beautiful, brilliant, enormous. Then I came inside and had a big mug of hot chocolate. Same deal. Beautiful, brilliant, enormous. What conclusions can I draw about this situation? Well, if you're making things out of snow, and then you're coming inside and having hot chocolate, it's probably not the height of summer. One inference that I can draw from these two sentences together is that it is wintertime when this sentence takes place. Where I live, these are not activities that one pursues in the height of summer outside. So I'm looking for clues within the text. Snow fort, I'm outside, I came inside, and then I had hot chocolate, which is not traditionally a beverage that is consumed when it's warm out. Let's take a look at another example. This paragraph is part of a longer passage that is about a young ballet dancer named Michaela. Michaela danced so wonderfully that she was awarded a scholarship to attend the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis School at the American Ballet Theater. That was only the beginning of her dancing success. When she was 17, Michaela danced with the Dance Theater of Harlem Professional Company. Later, she joined the Dutch National Junior Company. Today, Michaela is a soloist with the Dutch National Ballet. So very quickly, without getting bogged down in this passage, what are some conclusions, what are some inferences that we can draw about Michaela? Who is Michaela? What do we know about her? We know that she's a dancer. We know that she's very good at it, right? She danced so wonderfully that she got a scholarship. So I'm going to say Michaela is very talented. And we know that her talent led to success because her getting the scholarship was only the beginning of her dancing success. We can see from the passage that she was part of at least 3 different dance companies, the Dance Theater of Harlem, the Dutch National Junior Company, and as a soloist with the Dutch National Ballet today. So I'm going to say that Michaela is a very hard worker. Now, notice nowhere in the passage does it say Michaela is a very talented, hard-working dancer. Just like in the previous example, it didn't say, it was winter outside, so I made a snow fort. What the skill of inference is requires you to be a detective and take your magnifying glass to the passage to discover clues. Imagine you're a detective like this dog who's wearing a little deerstalker cap. Let's call him Sherlock Bones, the famous dog detective that I just made up. And I feel like Sherlock Holmes is always smoking a pipe, so I'm going to give this dog like a bone or a piece of rawhide or something. So imagine that you are a detective, or a dog detective if you like, and every time you read a text, let's say a book, that you are searching for clues within it. What you're doing when you make an inference is you are taking the information that you already know about the world and the places and people in it and how they behave and what they look like and what they do, and you're applying that knowledge to the text. When do people build snowmen? When do people build snow forts? When do they drink hot cocoa? In the wintertime. An important thing to remember, though, is that inferring is not guessing. Anytime you make an inference, you have to be pulling it directly from the text. That's your jumping off point. It can't just be a wild guess out of nowhere. It comes from information that you've got there on the page. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go eat my weight in cough drops. You can learn anything. David out.
Okay, so again, making an inference is just using the clues from the text plus your background knowledge and experience to come to a conclusion. Okay, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this today because students tend to have trouble with inferences for some reason. I do like what he said, is it's not just a guess. You're actually taking clues and information from the text. So you're not pulling it out of nowhere, you're pulling it from the text, and then you're filtering it through your background knowledge and experience and coming to a conclusion. So you didn't just pull it out of nowhere. All right, let's take a look at this. I'm going to read this to you and I'm going to ask you some questions. So Alice was carrying a large clothes basket from the bedroom down the stairs to the laundry room. She struggled under the weight of the basket. She wished her younger brothers would help her. Instead, they were playing. She had heard them throwing a baseball in the house earlier, and she had told them to go outside. They had gone to the backyard, but they had left the baseball on the stairs. What do you think might happen next? Think about that just based on the information that you're given and background knowledge, and come to a conclusion or an inference. Make an inference. What might happen next? Type that in the chat box for me. What do you think is going to happen next? What do I think is going to happen next? I think that she's going to trip and fall down the stairs on that baseball. Why do I think this? Well, this text says that she was carrying a basket of clothes and she was struggling under the weight of it, so she's already off balance. It talked about her little brothers playing with the baseball in the house and the fact that they had left that ball on the stairs. Anytime there's something on the stairs and you can't see where you're going, a lot of times you're going to trip on it, especially if it's something round like a baseball. That's the inference that I'm making, is that she is going to trip. All right. Let's look at this one. Winston stood at the store counter. It was hard to make a decision. On one hand, he had just enough money to buy the new game he wanted so badly. However, he had to come to the store to buy his mother's birthday present. If he bought her present, he would have to wait another week to have enough money for the game. As he looked at the game, he remembered that his mother made his favorite soup when he was sick. He also thought about how proud she was when he won the relay race. His mind was made up. All right, what do you think is going to happen next? What's Winston going to do next? Think about that for a minute. If you can, type it in your chat box for me. Okay, what do I think is going to happen next? I'm going to infer that he buys his mother the birthday present. Why do I think that? Well, the details in the passage, it says that he had come to the store to buy his mother's birthday present. So number one, that's why he was there. Then, as he looked at the game, he started remembering his mother made his favorite soup, how proud she was of him. So he started to have these warm feelings about his mother. And then it says his mind was made up after he had those thoughts. So I'm going to infer that he's going to buy the gift for his mother. Okay, let's try another one. It had been a beautiful sunny day. Now George saw the clouds begin to roll in. The gentle breeze of the day started blowing steadily. In the distance, the blue sky was now a dark, angry purple. Far away, but coming closer, George saw something that scared him. He ran to the house to tell his mother that they needed to get into the storm cellar right away. What might happen next? What do you think he saw? Type that in the chat box for me if you can. Excuse me. Allergies are still getting to me. Okay, what do I think might happen next? I'm going to infer that a tornado is coming. Why do I think that? Well, the clouds began to roll in all of a sudden. Then the breeze that was a gentle breeze started blowing steadily. The sky was now dark, angry purple. And now he saw something that scared him. And then he ran to the house to tell his mother they had to get into the shelter or the storm cellar right away. Well, where I'm from, my background knowledge, if you're getting in the storm cellar, usually one thing is happening, and that is a tornado is coming. So that's my inference. All right. I'm going to read these two different passages. This is the first one. The first one is from The Wonderful Wizard of, they're both from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz, excuse me. The first one is about Dorothy's home in Kansas. And then the second one is going to be about the road outside the Emerald City in Oz. So this is the first passage. It says, when Dorothy stood in the doorway and looked around, she could see nothing but the great gray prairie on every side. Not a tree nor a house broke the broad sweep of flat country that reached to the edge of the sky in all directions. The sun had baked the plowed land into a gray mass, with little cracks running through it. Even the grass was not green, for the sun had burned the tops of the long blades until they were the same gray color to be seen everywhere. Once the house had been painted, but the sun blistered the paint and the rains washed it away, and now the house was as dull and gray as everything else. Okay, what is the most common color around the area of Dorothy's home? Well, what did it say? Gray. The prairie was gray. The land was just a big gray mass. The house was gray. The grass was gray. So that's the most common color. Does that sound like a very pleasant place? Well, to me, it doesn't. Gray is not really known as a pleasant color. It's kind of dull and drab. All right, let's read this second one. The road was smooth and well paved now, and the country about was beautiful, so that the travelers rejoiced in leaving the forest far behind, and with it the many dangers that they had met in its gloomy shades. Once more they could see fences built beside the road, but these were painted green. And when they came to a small house in which a farmer evidently lived, that was also painted green. They passed several of these houses during the afternoon, and sometimes people came to the doors and looked at them as if they would like to ask questions, but no one came near them or spoke to them because of the great lion, of which they were very much afraid. The people were all dressed in clothing of a lovely emerald green color and wore peaked hats like those of the Munchkins. All right, what was the most common color? What did they mention over and over in this passage? Green, right? The fences were green, the house was green, even their clothes were green. Does that sound like a more pleasant place? It does to me. Better than gray, I say. Green tends to be a more happy color, springtime green, things like that. So what do you think the author is trying to say about the differences between these two places? I think he was simply trying to say that one was not so pleasant and the other one was more happy and pleasant. All right, any questions so far? Excuse me. All right, no questions. I'm going to keep going. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk a little bit about political cartoons and propaganda. So political cartoons have been around since the 19th century. They've been around forever. They express opinions about public issues and people and problems, things like that. They express opinions and ideas through captions and labels, analogies, irony. They use symbolism, and they also exaggerate a lot. They often require some background knowledge from the reader. And then propaganda. Propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, that's used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. So a lot of times you have political cartoons with some type of propaganda, okay? Some type of information that's biased or misleading in nature that's promoting some type of political cause. Okay, so let's look at this political cartoon here. So we have the Earth, and then we have, looks like some aliens in a spaceship and a caption that says they're willing to do this to their own home, and they wonder why we haven't made contact. So what is this political cartoon trying to say? What is it inferring? Okay, so if you look at the Earth, it looks like it's sick, right? It's got this hot water bottle on its head. It's got a thermometer in its mouth. It's got kind of droopy, sick eyes. So, and then you have these two aliens from another planet looking at our planet and saying they're willing to do this to their own home and they wonder why we haven't made contact. In other words, we're not taking care of the planet. The planet is sick, and that's why aliens aren't coming. So most likely this is some type of environmentalist propaganda. So environmentalists are trying to say, hey, we need to pay better attention to the Earth. We're making the Earth sick. All right, let's take a look at this one. Anybody know who this is? If you know who this is, type it in the chat box for me. Okay. If you don't know, this is Uncle Sam. Yes. So what does Uncle Sam represent? Do you know? If you know, type that in the chat box. Okay, so Uncle Sam, he represents America, or the United States of America. So then we have two different signs. We have a sign that says welcome refugees on one side, and then we have a another sign on the other hand that says keep out. And then we have Uncle Sam in the middle, and it looks like he is split right down the middle, right? He's got a crack right down the middle. So what does this mean? We can break this down by using a political cartoon analysis worksheet if we're having trouble. We do this by listing the objects or people that we see in the cartoon. So that first column, we have Uncle Sam and we have the signs. And then we want to list the objects that are symbols. Well, Uncle Sam is a symbol. He symbolizes America. And then these signs, well, these signs symbolize something, right? What do they symbolize? Opinions about refugees in America. That's what they're talking about. I just now noticed this. I've used this political cartoon over and over, and I just now noticed this too. But if you notice, blue is welcome. The sign that says welcome refugees is blue, and the one that says keep out is red. Well, blue is known as the Democratic Party, and red is also known as the Republican Party. So you can take that and see kind of like that represents uh, Republican and Democrat views as well. But if you have America and he's split right down the middle, that just simply means that is where the U.S. is on the issue of refugees coming to America. We're split right down the middle. Some of us agree that we should welcome them. Some of us think that we should keep them out. That's all that political cartoon means. But we can break it down. All right. I'm going to show you this real quick, just because this is in your homework today, your assignments. This is a political cartoon. I will tell you that this is from around the time of the Great Depression. We have two characters here. We have one character that's just an average Joe sitting on the street corner, or he's standing on the street corner, and he's got a sign that says healthy unemployed. And he's selling apples because he is evidently unemployed, so he's got to make money somehow. So he's selling apples on the street corner. Then we have another guy that's sitting there, and he has apparently bought some of these apples, and he has eaten a whole bunch of them, and it looks like he's furiously eating apples. Well, the guy on the pole over there, he represents just your American average Joe, okay? The one that's sitting down, he is dressed a little more nice. He's got fancy clothes on. He's got a cane, a top hat. So he represents the rich. Okay, what does this say about the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party. I'm stuck on the Democratic Party today. What does this say about America? Well, and about the Great Depression. That's during the time of the Great Depression. Well, it affected the poor and the rich both. So it affected everybody all at once. Even the rich people were affected by the Great Depression. Also, in your homework, you'll see this word caricature. A caricature is just a picture, a description, or an imitation of a person in which certain striking characteristics are exaggerated in order to create comic or dramatic effect. In this case, they exaggerated, excuse me, I went the wrong way. They exaggerated the rich man where he's eating all these apples. He's the one that's more exaggerated, so he is the caricature in this political cartoon. And you'll see that in your homework, and everybody kind of didn't know what that was, so I want to explain that to you before you even did your homework. So you'll see that in your homework. Okay, I keep calling it homework, but you're not doing it at home. You're doing it whenever. Your assignments, I should say. Okay. Anyways, does anybody have any questions for me? If not, that's the end of our lesson for today. We're going to break here in just a minute. You're going to go to your Google Classroom under the classwork tab. You're going to scroll down to today's date. This is class 3, October 1st. It's pumpkin season, y'all. Happy October. I love October. I just love it. I love pumpkin spice. I love pumpkins. I love spooky season. It's a lot of fun. It's the little things in life, right? So anyways, you have 1, 2, 3 assignments on making inferences, because I wanted you to have a lot of practice on that. And then you have one on reading political cartoons and propaganda. So that's your assignments for today. We're going to break right now and do that. So you can type your name in the chat box if you don't have any questions for me. And you can be dismissed to start working on those. We're going to meet back at 11 o'clock to go over these together, and I'll answer any questions you might have. I will see you guys here in just a little bit.